So welcome back. We're back in the workshop. Obviously not doing a job I wanted to do, but we've got to take the engine out. We've got to fix this timing trigger wheel issue, and I think we've got 3 weeks now to our next test day at Santa Pod. So it's got to be done. It's not a big job. A couple of hours, engine will be out. It's probably the same amount of time to take the engine out as it is to do the cylinder head. So it's not overly long, but it is frustrating because, as you've seen, we've had the cylinder head off probably a month ago to do the cylinder head. We could have done this job back then, but I suppose you don't know. So going on further with the problem that we've got is, as explained in the previous video, it's all down to engine harmonics. Now this is not really to do with what we suspect is engine balancing, because we've had that done. So this is more to the point of, at some point of on a drag race run, there'll be a certain point where the engine harmonics will overpower the bolts on this trigger wheel. This is why we're not seeing the issue on the front engine, only the back engine. So from what I can read, because I did a lot of research last night, reading, trying to understand this a little bit further, it's kind of something that's a mystery. We don't, you can't find out specifically why it does it. You can't find out specifically what causes the issue. We don't know whether this balancer that we're going to put on the crank is going to solve the issue, but you've kind of got to go through the steps of one thing at a time to try and sort it. Now, people will be questioning, why don't I just put an external trigger wheel on? Yes, it would solve the problem. Yes, it would fix it one time hit. The issue I have is, as I've just said, we've got 3 weeks to get it done, get it ready, get it prepped for pod. And with only having 3 weeks, I feel the quickest route is to just replace the timing trigger wheel. We've got to do it anyway. We've got to take it out of the engine. So even if I did put an external trigger wheel in, I've still got to take the trigger wheel out of the engine. And I've already got a spare trigger wheel, a brand new one from Vauxhall, which last time this happened, I think there was only 3 left in stock in the whole of Europe. So I just bought all 3 just in case. So I've got one anyway. I've got a Z20 LET bottom pulley, thanks to Wayne. So I've got one of them. So it's kind of just man hours. Within the space of probably 2 or 3 days, the car will be back running, everything will be good, and we can get to pod. Where I'd have to buy a trigger wheel, I would have to, mess around fitting it. I would have to make a sensor bracket. Yes, I've got the abilities. Yes, I can get that done. But it's the point of, it's just extra work I've got to do, which, at this time, with what work I've got around me, with what time I've got on the car, I need to just get the quickest and fastest fix done to get us back on racing. But fingers crossed, I think they're having the harmonic damper on the pulley will sort the issue. So if anyone wants to know a little bit more about this, go on to a company, I think they're called ATI dampeners. They explain more what the dampeners do, what engine harmonics are, and how the dampeners work. It's quite a complicated thing, so there's some late night reading for you. So now let's get the Corsa down on off the ramp. Let's get the time lapse going. Let's get the back engine out, and fingers crossed, by this afternoon, we'll have the engine on the floor, possibly even on the stand. We can take the sump off and we can have a look what's going on inside. 12:30. I started at, I think, 10:30, 10 o'clock. So 2.5 hours to get the full engine out. It's out, it's on the floor. Tom's come to help me just to manhandle it out, because obviously it's a two-man job to lift and turn and everything else, but it's come out quite simple. There's not much we can spot the engine. Obviously we can see the timing trigger wheel spinning when you put your finger in the hole. So now let's get onto an engine stand, get the bottom end stripped. Basically everything's got to come apart to get the crank out, and let's get the timing trigger wheel sorted out and see where we can, you know, diagnose this problem and fix it, fingers crossed. Either way, we're still 3 weeks from Santa Pod, and we're still on target to get there, and I'm pretty certain we'll get there. So, following on, we're at Oldham Engines, Saturday afternoon lock-in, it's all closed. Tom's bailing me out a little bit, but there is a big but. Anyone who knows Tom knows this is a bit like what the Americans do, where they say, do it for Dale. This is, do it for Tom. I break this engine all the time just so Tom can get out the house on a weekend and don't have to, you know, do anything with his family. So technically, I'm the saviour here. I'm doing it for Tom. So anyone who knows Tom, please send him doing it for Tom. So, in Oldham Engines, we're about to get the engine on the stand and we're about to strip it. So yeah, let's get it on the engine stand, let's get it stripped, and let's see what the damage is. So, we're stripped, the head's off, it's on the bench, we're into the bottom end. Now this is what we're talking about, the timing trigger wheel. There we go. And as I said to people, it physically does no damage to the trigger wheel at all. It literally shears the heads of the bolts off. That's all it does. So it's definitely down to something to do with harmonics. Again, we're going to try and eradicate that, but that's the fault and that's what we're getting. So just to prove obviously that we do balance them, if you look at my clutch disc, you can see the line. That is where it's come back from the balancers, and that's the way the clutch has to go back together. So let's get the rods out, let's get the pistons out, and let's see where we end up for the end of play today. So the crank's out, timing trigger wheel. As I said, I've had this before, and as you can see, it really does no damage to it. There's the sheared bolt. Where am I looking? There's the sheared bolt, there we go. And you can see they're still sat in the crank. And you can also see a polishing mark where it's been balanced. So, definitely down to harmonics. We're going to have to put a dampener on. We're going to have to literally trial and error to try and solve this problem. So that's where we're at, and like you say, we're going to rebuild this engine now and get it back in the car and get it back running. So that's going to end this video here now, because like I say, you know, there's other projects that I need to get on with. This one, you know, we're going to have to order some bits and pieces to get it finished. So thanks for watching. 2 steps forwards, 1 step back, but just to say this, and because I watched the program this week, once a week on an iPhone, it'll give you a ping up of how many hours you've been on your phone per day on average. So people who are sitting there, who are looking at, you know, they've got 4 or 5 hours on the phone per day, it's a waste. As much as this gets on my nerves, and as much as I don't want my engine to fail, and I don't want to do this, think about it. I'm still moving forward, hitting goals, hitting the dream of this car being finished and getting it where it needs to be, rather than sat at home, on Facebook, on your phone, doing absolutely nothing. So, like and subscribe. See you on the next one, guys.